Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is why is it so hard to leave a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath? Why is it so painful? Why is this so such a difficult or painful relationship? And I think a lot of it, even the pain occurs, I would say, in the course of the relationship, long before the relationship is over. Um, and can really result in some very hard pressed emotional states. Really, that can result in a lot of isolation, a lot of loneliness, a lot of dejection, a lot of sort of self-loathing, a feeling of loss, especially that of grief after these relationships. So this is not just, a once in a, oh, this is just this, just get over it. People oftentimes don't understand the degree of emotional involvement that takes place in a relationship with a malignant narcissist or a psychopath. Because of the asymmetry, because of the imbalance, and the need for this sort of high level of fantasy thinking, grandiosity, and really I would call, a lot of the self-promotion that is engaged in by the narcissist and the psychopath, which is really what they're doing. And it leaves others feeling very empty, very hurt, almost like an emotional hit and run. They don't know quite when or how it happened, but they feel hurt or scarred from it. And I would say a lot of the hurt, comes from the addiction of that to that asymmetry, and the feeling that then you are then always in a reactive state versus a responsive state. And I really do feel that it is that high level reactive state that leads people into that post-traumatic stress syndrome, sort of very, it's very difficult to emerge from, especially for our viewers who have had, long or prolonged relationships. They've been in marriages, they've been in work relationships, they've had families, a lot of their life has been with and invested and, might have roots with this individual. And it makes it very painful and difficult to sort it out, and to make sense of things, heads or tails, if you will, and regain empowerment and regain alignment with who they are in the core of their goodness, and not being sort of overwhelmed by the pressure and the gaslighting of a psychopath. It is so difficult to break that, I feel, because of the highly reactive state that is created in supply. So, as I was thinking, the narcissist or a psychopath, they always sort of have this excessive need for attention and admiration, and they do not give this in return. So there is an imbalance in the very nature of the relationship. It's usually where one is the authority, the more than, the better than, and then the supply has to be, made sure that they are not given information or certain support to the exclusion of them. So if it were to bring them down in whatever way, that is not experienced in the relationship. That is to be avoided at all costs. So that's why I say it's very difficult to have a communication, because it is perceived as challenging by the narcissist. They don't like to be challenged, to be accountable for specific things. They just, it's just like a hole right through them. They aren't there for that. And so I think it's so very difficult and so very painful, because one is then always living in a reactive state. Maybe it was in the beginning of the relationship. Was it not a very highly reactive relationship? Were you always applauding them? Were you always laughing at them? Were you always giving them attention? Were eyes always on them? were your eyes on their backside more because they never gave you eye contact? I mean, did they ever give you this in exchange? Or was it uncomfortable? Was it not supported or trusted or believed in? And so this, I feel it's a very highly reactive. So if you're always reacting, so you're always sort of on that agitated level of the fight or flight. You're not responding. You're not sort of being able to give yourself credit where credit is due, to acknowledge and validate what just happened and then process and then communicate from that level. It's a completely different experience, and it's a completely different set of boundaries and standards that either will protect you or not protect you. One will protect you from harm, the other will lead to harm. And this highly reactive. So I think, that's why people get triggered, because they're overwired in that reactive state. They've had to react. They've had to please others. They've had to pacify others. They've had to tune and be good for others, to fit into the mold and need of the narcissist or the psychopath. So when it comes time to check in, that has not been visited. The lights might not be on inside. It might be filled with cobwebs and dirty and dusty, and there ain't no cleaning rag or flashlight to get there. There ain't no broom. You just got to walk into you don't even know what. So you don't even want to walk there, i.e. check in within and sort of have that trust within. So you sort of give up your self-trust while engaging in these relationships. Meaning, if you're always reacting, so that you're then navigating by this external locus of control. It's kind of like you're never getting a chance to interact. You're not getting a chance to have that balance. It's like an audience and spectator, or, orator and spectator. The narcissist has to be the one, on the stage, and then everyone else has to be in the seats below. They have to keep this demarcation. They have to keep this split. And so people try to jump the demarcation. They're trying to have a relationship, but the narcissist will continue to cut them off. You get so good, then you fall down into the abyss. You try to get on stage with them, you're going to fall right into what you thought was the orchestra pit, but it goes down, 20 feet, and you didn't realize there is no orchestra pit. They took that out 10 years ago, and you're like, wait a second, and it just gets very, very strange. People then continue to struggle to be in the relationship with a narcissist, but they will always sort of back them down, because if things to get real true, the narcissist is going to shriek away. They're going to go back to that insatiable need for power and control. And when others are then empowered, they take that as a challenge. It's an ego struggle. Just like in a band, who's going to be the lead singer? I mean, that's kind of what it becomes. Mick Jagger or Keith Richards. What are we going to do? I mean, eventually they both are, front men. So you have to kind of take a back seat to the front man of the relationship band, if you will. So I really do feel that that's why it's also so difficult to identify and keep learning, is because you're always in a reactive. And so you have to then take a step back for yourself and become in a responsive state, responsive to yourself and responsible for yourself, and not allowing this, this individual, this relationship to, cause you to be unrelate to yourself, and become even unrelatable simultaneously. And the reactivity. So it's just kind of like when if you're around something that startles you or frightens you, and it's been unpredictable, you might become easily startled, and you might become fearful of specific situations, fearful of going outside, fearful of driving, fearful, this is, post-traumatic stress disorder is when it's very difficult to just do the everyday things. There is a high preponderance of fear and terror and sort of being agitated, and oftentimes is very painful, and then people will develop almost, very other, it's a very isolating tendencies or socially withdrawn, become, and it's not that they're inept, but they're doing this to protect and to soothe. So some of it might be very important and productive and good and important work. But the coming back to that reactiveness, so you then have to understand what and is and how does responsiveness feel for you when you are responding, which means you've had a chance to process something and then communicate backly in the appropriate manner, appropriate volume, appropriate context. And so once you become more responsive, you'll then develop that mechanism more strongly with repetition and experience, and you won't experience that whole sort of pain anymore of being caused to be that very caustic reactivity, that it's kind of like, well, you don't buy any more tickets to the movie theater then if you don't want to live in that fear. Stop going to that movie. Stop buying the tickets for the movie. Stop getting ready for that movie. You have to sort of back it up and then say, what is the positive, orderly direction, thinking, feeling, behaving, and becoming, if that is not it. So you have to identify then, and enrich oneself and fill yourself up, and you don't, instead of filling up and becoming reactive to that again. So it's then learning to engage in other behaviors, other ways to focus your mind, on other areas that you wanted to. There's lots of silver linings. There are lots of opportunities for you, and then the growth mode, and then the self-enrichment mode, and self-education mode, especially now, to kind of come through and then develop responsiveness rather than reactiveness, because I really feel that a lot of that codependency, and then that guilt of sort of owning your truth, is then something that you then become responsive to. Rather than reactive to, you're becoming responding to. You're no longer afraid to say no. You're no longer afraid to have self-respect. You're no longer afraid to stop the abuse. You're no longer afraid to say, we're going to stop, I'm stopping this right now. Like you're letting go of your powerlessness, and instead you're getting into your power, which is okay. That is what you are supposed to be in, but usually that's a depraved or deprived state when you're in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath. They cannot simultaneously coexist, because there is just it is a conflict. A psychopath is very much just wants to take, and if they are done, then they will be done. It doesn't mean that you are unlovable, unattractive, unintelligent, whatever. They just move on. They just sort of, and they do not feel bad. They pick up and move on from marriages, lost jobs. They just sort of, then they remarry, rejob, just as if it just doesn't even weigh on them. So, don't allow things to weigh more on you than on the abuser. So in other words, it's very strange, I feel, when we look at the dynamic of sort of psychopathic abuse, and then those people who are taken advantage of or exploited or deceived, and I just lost my train of thought. One moment. So let me just take it back here one moment. Yeah, so in other words, being in that very painful state, oftentimes it's difficult to reclaim, I would say, one's inner sense of self, because they've foregone it, they've negated it, they've denigrated it themselves, and they did not even realize it, that was, part of the dance with the psychopath, is to denigrate or deny or reduce one's self in order to, to give to them. So in other words, there is an agreement to grow together, but you don't realize that you're growing away from yourself, which is a strange thing, or you're really growing into a place where you will not have anything to show in your hands, because, they oftentimes are just gone. they just, they if they feel that they want to move, change a job, change a relationship, they have no qualms. They don't look back. And so people are oftentimes very confused and bewildered by how quickly they move on. It's just like they got remarried already. They did this already. I mean, it's spellbinding. So realizing that, that oftentimes is part of, coming through that is kind of like a withdrawal symptom, I would say, of an addiction to a psychopath or a narcissist. That's part of it. And that's, really why it's very painful too, is because you have to realize that you had to sort of numb out that part of yourself that was responsible. In other words, can you write it down? In other words, what do you really want to do? I want to learn, earth history. I want to learn how to, hand make spaghetti. I want to learn how to create a whatever. I want to fly a kite. All these different things that once you really want to, before you shoot yourself down, those are the inspiration and those are the things that you need to catch in order to heal. So usually those are the whole sundry list of things you did not get to do or were not permitted to do or become in the course of a relationship that was controlling or was, disempowering to you, such as we see really in those relationships with those people who are malignant, narcissist, or psychopathic. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. So namely, detoxing from this influence, and then becoming, reinvigorated by your own list of what is truly stimulating and enriching to you, that gives life unto you within the day. So in other words, what can you do that will fill up your own cup, your need for knowledge, your thirst for information, your need to relax, your need to be sporty, your need to be romantic, your need to be comforted? How can you attack this really from all sides and make sure that on all levels you are experiencing this and coming back to a sense of self that does not feel foreign, that does not feel inadequate, that does not feel bored, or does not feel like it does have a lot going on. You just really need to tap in and give credence and credibility and allow some success to take place. In other words, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to watch a documentary on the Grand Canyon, or, Maine lobster, and, or whatever, all these different things. You got to open up a positive can of worms and begin to follow that. And you will begin to light up, be happy, and then you'll begin to see, how the pain, why it was there, and what it was really keeping you away from, which is your happiness. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.